Hi, everyone. I'm James Garbutt.
And I'm Denny Dumas.
And this is the Garbutt Dumas Real Estate Podcast.
Jamie, we have a pretty unique listing in Surrey right now. What can be done with the property is a bit of a question mark. It's a unique apple. It's on a big slope. It's in a tree-protected area.
Mm-hmm.
It is an ex-care facility. It's a big home with 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms?
7
bathrooms, 5,500 square feet.
5732. It is a North Surrey mansion, and it is getting more attention than I ever anticipated.
Yeah.
And this listing triggered this idea for this podcast episode on good questions to ask a listing agent, because I've had a lot of bad ones over the last little bit. And what I think the biggest lesson learned about this listing is the more information you provide about a listing, the more confusion you get from realtors around that listing. And that was my mistake, is I provided a little bit too much detail on some things that just led to a lot of confusing realtors. And in that confusion, what would come out of it is really bad questions. and I get it. This particular home is a unique scenario, but there are some fundamentals that really kind of come back on like what, a permit and authorized versus unauthorized and rezoning and those processes. Mm-hmm. And I guess kind of what I'm getting at is I'm dealing with a very old home that's far from its original condition. It was not originally 5,732 square feet. Our listing in North Surrey has been getting an absolute ton of inquiries because it's priced at $950,000 and it's 5,732 square feet. But it is, when you go there, it was previously used as a care facility, special housing care facility, and it no longer is. So but it is a house. But under the zoning, it is under a special care housing zoning. But it is in a residential area. So that alone confuses people. This particular one is not found on BC assessment because likely of that it was a care facility and it had a different zoning. So that confuses people. And the fact is that if you want to change the zoning, you have to rezone it, and that confuses people. And also, because this home is so altered from its original condition, it almost looks like it's likely a house that had a major extension 50 years ago or maybe 80, or it could be two houses that were merged into one. But because of that, a lot of it was done prior to our seller's time owning the property, and they know nothing about it. And unfortunately, I can't answer those questions because it was done prior to like the 90s. So there's no electronic records at the city hall about these permits. The city doesn't know about it. So there's just a lot of missing information. And essentially, you have to walk through the property and see what you're getting and make the best sense of it. And trying to explain that to people has been very challenged because I get a lot of blank stares and confused looks. So, I mean, in short, this triggered, what are good questions to get a little more out of a listing agent instead of maybe broad, generic ones that don't. And so I guess, let's start with, I don't know, this home here. What can I do with this property? What can you do with this property? I mean, that's a very broad angle. And now, in this particular North Surrey home, I phoned the city hall, so I wanted to know what you can do with this property. And basically, it's a single-family zoning. So the likely best use is if you rezone this property, you're rezoning it to get the same thing that currently exists. So a good reason to rezone a property is to get more, is to turn one house into two or one house into townhouses. But in this particular instance, it is a special care housing zone, and to rezone it, you get a single family RS zone. And that rezoning process has a checklist at a city. It has a lot of what ifs and it depends. And the moment you phone the city to go into that rezoning process, they will give you direction and give you a checklist of requirements and things that you have to do. This particular one might be a little bit simpler because if you don't change the structure and you just want the rezoning to happen, maybe it's a little more streamlined. But at the end of the day, you have to call the city. And a rezoning process, asking the listing agent to explain the step-by-steps of a rezoning process is not realistic. So I guess I've had a lot of questions on what you can do with the property. And then when I answer that, like you could rezone the property, you could redevelop it. there's a lot of confusion as to, okay, what does that involve? and the moment it goes, what does a rezoning involve? Move on and recognize you got to check with the city and go through that process. And you need a little bit of homework there. Separately, it was a care facility, and it was closed in the fall. And people want to know, can I open a new care facility? Can I reopen a care facility? And I have to say, maybe. I can't give you comfort of that or not. That is a Fraser Health thing. You have to apply for one. This care facility is closed. There's no license associated with it. You're buying a house with special care that is under special care zoning. That is really a residential home. So I can't guarantee that Fraser Health is going to let you open it. You're going to have to talk to Fraser Health about that. You're not getting any licenses. You are buying this house on this lot. And that is what you're buying. Blank stares, uncertainty it leads to. So anyway, this is obviously coming out a little bit of frustration, but I don't know if you can open a care facility in this home is the answer to that question, but don't expect me to be able to answer it in a way that gives you comfort. I don't know. And so I guess when I'm getting these questions about what can you do with this home? Can I open a care facility? How many suites can I get into it? How much, what income can I generate from this thing? You're putting a lot of pressure on the listing agent to put themselves out there, and if they answer it with confidence, they probably shouldn't. Yeah. And so recognize that there are certain questions that you can't expect the listing agent to increase their liability by giving you an answer that should come from City Hall. But there are ways to dance around those questions that might be a little bit lighter. So instead of saying, what can I do with this property, or what does a rezoning look like? A nice question that I think would be great that I use when I'm talking to a listing agent of a home that I don't fully understand is, look, I'm going to call the city and do my due diligence in this property, but I'm hoping you can help me out and give me your thoughts on what you think is the best use of this property based on your understanding of it. And really that is taking the pressure off of them giving you an absolute answer and getting their thoughts on what is it going to be torn down or are people working with the existing structure? And if they don't give me a good answer on that first one, that's my next question is, do you think that most buyers are looking at this to work with the structure, or is it builders that are looking to tear down? And that alone gives me a lot. Mm-hmm. And then the moment a property needs to go through a rezoning process for its best use, maybe it's one house that you're turning into two, maybe it's a heritage home that you're trying to do a heritage revitalization on, or maybe it's this single family house in North Surrey that has special care housing zoning that you want RS zoning for. Yeah. So the moment it triggers a rezoning, don't expect the agent to give you peace of mind on that rezoning. Ask the agent to share whatever they know about that rezoning process. Ask the agent if their client has applied for a rezoning or done any paperwork towards it, or if there's any history with their client, this home, and going through a rezoning process. But recognize that anytime a rezoning comes into the picture, you need to phone the city and independently get that information outside of the listing agent. And that is just a rezoning thing.
Happens a lot in New West for the new OCP that was adopted a couple of years ago in these areas that the city would like to eventually see townhomes, right? So they're currently zoned as single family. That means you'd have to go through a rezoning process. You'd probably have to buy 3, 4, or 5 lots together. And for listing agents selling one individual home, not as a land assembly, but one individual home there, to answer the question of, well, how long will it take me to get townhomes here? It's an impossible question for us to answer. We can kind of give guidance on, look, the city of New West typically moves in this direction. You'd have to, go through a bunch of council meetings. You have to apply for a rezoning and then propose what you'd like to get done there, and they'd have to check all those boxes. Yeah. So for us to give you assurance of, is that a 6-month process, 12-month process, 24-month process? We can't answer that.
If all goes well, it's an 18 to 24-month process. Yeah. But there are so many random what-if little random scenarios that could come up that could get in the way of everything. And for it's just on knowing that it could be a rezoning goes through public hearing in a lot of instances. It gets feedback from neighbors in some cases. It triggers other things. There are so many things that could happen that it's a challenge to give peace of mind when it comes to rezoning. So it's better that the buyer and the buyer's agent knows the probability of rezoning, is familiar with the city, and familiar with the circumstance, but just assuming it's going to happen, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Any old homes? So aside from rezoning, let's talk about building permits and permit history. What has been done to this home? What's the permits? Recognize that any permits or any work done to a home prior to the 1990s are poorly documented in most cities. And so if you're asking a listing agent, what has been done to this home? And they say, well, my client's owned it for 5 years and it's 100 years old. So there's 95 years of unknowns. And most of the work was done over 20 years ago. Yeah. So the answer is, I don't truly know everything that's been done with this home. I can't give you, I can't give you certainty on what's been done with this home. But what I see is X, X, and X. I see some evidence of this and this. Don't expect, if an agent doesn't know everything about, like this particular home in North Surrey is 4 levels, 5,732 square feet, and it has multiple electrical panels, multiple heating systems. It is a mishmash of stuff. Yeah. So when a buyer walks in, is there anything wrong with this house? The answer is probably. so there probably is, but it still is. Is there anything wrong with this house is a very broad, open statement. Yeah. How old's the roof? Do you know if there's any moisture? Specific questions. Get specific. What do you know about the electrical? What do you know about the plumbing? If you have a broad question, you're not going to get a lot. Try to trigger a response. And if it's I don't know, if you're specific about electrical and you're specific about plumbing, eventually you might stumble across an answer if you're specific about the questions you're asking. If you highlight electrical, plumbing, roof, this or that. Yeah. If it's I don't know over and over because the seller doesn't want to take liability for a structure they don't know much about, most of the work was done prior to them owning it, you can't see what's behind the walls, there's a lot of scenarios where you don't want to, go the extra, like if you find out more about the home and you communicate that to other people, you're putting yourself out there. So there's a lot of scenarios why you would want the buyer to just do it, figure it out for themselves, have an inspector look through and do their own due diligence. And this is one of them. Yeah. So I've encountered a lot of questions I can't answer. And the frustrating thing is if they were a little more specific to the questions, they might get a better answer out. But separately, a lot of people just want an answer to a question that can't be answered. And just recognize that if it can't be answered, you have to just move on. And you have to move on. Don't continue to ask the same question. Yeah. So building permits, if you can't get peace of mind on what's been done, just the questions there, ask specific questions. Ask questions about plumbing, electrical, roof, and recognize that if the work was done prior to the 90s, it's poorly documented, and staring at a listing agent that's not giving the answer you want to hear is not going to get you a better answer.
Can we wrap this up with questions, the right questions and the wrong questions to ask on offer date? From the buyer side. Yeah. So we get this a lot, and it happened yesterday, where an agent will call you at 9 a.m. on offer date, that the offers are due at 5 p.m. And they'll say, well, how many offers are confirmed? And our answer always is, I don't know, it's not 5 p.m. yet. So a lot of times on offer date, it is usually buyers' agents are sending offers in last second. They're calling you at 5 or 4:45 if the time is 5 p.m. and they're saying, well, how many offers do you have in your hand? Versus 9 a.m., there's so much that's going to unfold in that day, especially if it was a really busy listing. If you have 50 showings at a listing over the weekend, there could be 2 offers, there could be 22 offers. And most of them come in that last hour. We get this all the time too, is like, what is the seller expecting? What price is the seller expecting? And the way I answer that question, because I don't really know how to answer it, is they're expecting the best price. Like, I don't know. If it were listed at $999, let's say, like, I'm not going to tell you that the seller is expecting $100,000 over asking, $40,000 over asking. They're expecting to work with the best offer.
In this particular market, at this current moment in time, it is hard for a listing agent to give you a confident answer on what they're expecting in terms of sale price. Yeah. It's a moving part. There's a lot of change. It's a moving target. So just, where do you think this will land is a nice way to kind of word it, to get maybe some feedback. But recognize that most agents don't know until it happens. And when you're talking about offers there, how many offers are you getting? The day before offer presentation, the morning of an evening offer presentation. if you are an agent that's putting offers out there regularly, you're going to recognize that question doesn't hold a lot of weight. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of many instances in the past 30 days where, a house, and particularly with detached and probably townhouses, where, it seemed like 2 to 3 offers in the morning and it ended up being 9 by the evening.
Yeah.
So just seeing this wide spectrum of, like, if you ask that question every week, how bad of an answer you might get, but there's a few different ways to ask that question and get something.
Totally.
So when it's strata, if it's a day before an offer, asking an agent how many offers are you expecting a day before is probably, it might give you some idea, but just a simpler question: how many people are showing interest? How many second showings have you had? How many people have requested strata documents? Those give you clues to interest.
Yeah. Has anyone done a pre-inspection?
Yeah. Has anyone done a pre-inspection?
Yeah. Those are answers that listing agents can give you firm numbers, right? Like, I've sent strata docs out to 7 groups. 2 groups did a pre-inspection this morning. Whereas, how many offers are you expecting? Like, literally, my response often is, it could be 3, it could be 13. Like, I don't know yet.
If you say how many offers the day before, the morning of, you're saying in a way that you want, like, answers.
Yeah.
so if you acknowledge that they can't give you firm answers, say it differently.
Yeah.
Say, look, I recognize that you don't know how many offers you're going to get yet, but if you were to guess, what is the range of possibilities that are in your mind? Like, what is the range of offers you're expecting?
Yeah. I think it is important to communicate really well with the listing agent when you have a client that's going to offer on something, and just calling them the morning of and saying, hey, Denny, James, just so you know, my client is going to be writing an offer. What dates is your seller looking for? How many clients or how many sets of strata docs have you sent out? Just be in their ear and let them know early that you're going to be writing, because that helps us with future conversations. An hour later, when another realtor says, how many offers are you expecting? We say, well, one guy just called me, or one lady just called me, and they're confirmed, but I haven't seen it yet. Yeah. So I really like when agents when they communicate really well, when they let you know early that they're going to be writing, just kind of helps you navigate through those vague questions on offer day.
And we just regarding those offers. So when it is time to offer, asking what is important to the seller.
Exactly.
Aside from price, what's important to the seller? What dates are they looking for? Is there any inclusions, exclusions that they would like to see? Is there any special requests in the offer that you'd like to see? And sometimes you get a little bit out of that as well.
Totally.
You understand what's most important. Recently sold a place in West Van because of terms, not price. I mean, we had the best price too, but we got it. Well, I was told we had the same price, but we got it because of terms. And so sometimes just being flexible in your terms is the difference maker between getting a home and not getting a home.
Totally.
Yeah.
I like that one. I feel like
and then
really
when the offer is in and you don't know the answer, one last question is, how are we looking?
Yeah.
Anything to get you a tip on the moment. Do we have a chance? Is our offer in the running?
Yeah.
Anything to give you some sort of feedback if you can get it out of the listing agent at the time of submitting the offer? Because if you say, if they give you something, are we in the running? And they say no, or how are we looking? Not very good.
Yeah.
It gives you a chance to scramble and improve your offer, even if it's after the deadline. Those are the moments that matter the most. So,
and those are the little things that separate really good buyer's agents and people that will win in challenging situations like multiple offers are those extra little questions, right? Like often, what did you say? How are we looking?
Yeah. How's our offer looking?
Often in my email or in a text to that realtor right away, it's please let me know if we're not in the lead. Yeah. So they can literally reply right away. Well, I have 4 offers and you're number 3 there's 2 that are ahead of you. Perfect. Okay, now we can have a conversation with the buyer to see if they'd like to improve. But like asking those questions that are much easier to answer than tell me what price you think it's going to sell for, like we can't really answer those.
And when we have our buyer's realtor hat in this position, we really appreciate those listing agents that communicate well.
Huge.
Thank you.
Huge.
Thank you for those that call us back, that let us know where the offer stands, that just have communication on that offer presentation evening. Mm-hmm. And the ones that ghost you until the next day in the evening, there's no excuse. I mean, when you get an offer, there needs to be a basic response and communication going out to everyone that submits an offer. We are listing agents too. We run into situations where we get 10, 20 offers and listings that get a ton of interest. And even in those cases, we still communicate with everyone. So just putting that out there, communication.
I like it. I feel like we helped people today, Jamie.
I hope so.